At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
All right, Ohio Political News. Another award-winning podcast. It's award-winning because, as I always say, we give ourselves the award, so say, Lute. How's everybody doing out there tonight? See who is with us here. We got Commissioner from Lake County, John Pleshnik. Very good to see you.
Hey,
Brian, you made the trip too. There you are.
Yeah, I made it. We were in the party in the park cleaning up, but we had to make it back for this show tonight. Looking forward to it. We got a
good show tonight. JD Wilcox is with us here tonight. He is a documentary artist who put together Who Shot Trump? And we're going to just go through that from top to bottom because, as I've said, I was talking to you earlier, I've watched it 3 times now because every time I watch it, I get more information. I learn something. And it's just fascinating. It's so fascinating. We're going to go through all this, and when we're done with it, you're going to be more confused than you ever dreamed possible about what took place. And for Trump, this is what I don't get. For Trump to say, well, we're just going to put it all behind us now because they had a bad day. That is not even possible. But JD, let me introduce you. So now how many documentaries have you done, would you say?
Well, when I was back in Hollywood, I did an awful lot of what they call nonfiction television, which is TV programs for, channels like the Discovery Channel, the Military Channel, ESPN, that kind of thing. So probably dozens of, what you would consider a documentary. This is my second independent documentary where I'm footing the bills. So it's my second independent documentary, but I've been doing this work for a long, long time. And
people can actually see it now. I'm going to try to dig it up, but it's what would be the link to watch it? I'll try to dig that up throughout the show here.
Sure. The best place to go is to whoshottrump.us. That's the website that has the link to the full movie. It has clips. It has the trailer. And eventually, all of the 3D files that I created to, examine this crime scene, they're all going to be posted there as well, so everybody can do their own crime scene investigation. So that's the best place to go, whoshottrump.us.
Awesome. Okay, what I want to do here tonight is I've chopped up your video into 11 different little tiny segments and stuff. So I'll play one of those. We can talk about it. And that we can also go in chronological order because there's so much. It'd be so easy to get off track and everything. This one, this is very disturbing
Snoop
here.
Snoop Dogg pulling the trigger on a toy gun aimed at a clown dressed as President Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is a plague.
He is not only unfit, he has to be eliminated.
A man dressed to look like President Donald Trump gets stabbed to death on stage.
He's already led an insurrection and threatened to be a dictator on day one.
He is the gravest threat to our democracy in our history.
Donald Trump can never hold this office again.
I mean, he's so blatantly stupid. He's a punk, he's a dog, he's a pig.
We kind of forget about all of this that was going on prior to the assassination with people just coming out and ridiculing Trump and saying that he should be assassinated and he should be killed. And I think, you tell me your thoughts on that, but to me it seems like they were trying to set up this assassination. Would you concur with that?
I don't have any direct evidence that the current government at the time that Trump was running for re-election was trying to assassinate him. I'm not saying that they weren't. I'm saying that I don't have any evidence of that. And my movie, Who Shot Trump, there's no speculation in it. As you know, because you've seen it, it's really more of just a straight crime scene investigation. I don't engage in any speculation. There's no conspiracy theories in it at all. So if you want me to speculate now about why I think they were doing that, I'll be more than happy to do that. I just want everybody to know, especially the people who might be Democrats, who might be watching, the movie is not political. It's not really about Donald Trump. It's about the truth. And the truth is we don't know who shot him, even though the FBI and the government and the news media have been claiming for a year that we do know, we don't. And people who claim they do, they don't either. So your question was about all this violent rhetoric that was everywhere before he got the first assassination attempt, and then it sort of died down for a little while, but then it came storming back, and then there was a second assassination attempt, and then everybody kind of stopped the violent rhetoric. But everybody needs to remember that a lot of high-profile people were talking in very violent terms about Donald Trump and his family, things about his son, things about his daughter being raped, just horrible, horrible stuff that had never been said about a political candidate before. But it was fair game to do that about Trump. I don't think it helped. It certainly didn't help the level of political discourse in our country. But I don't have direct evidence tying what was said to the assassination attempt. And knowing what I know now, that there were multiple shooters, it's a coordinated effort. It wasn't just the actions of one angry, politically motivated gunman trying to lash out at somebody because he had been motivated by all these media personalities telling him Trump was Hitler. It was a coordinated assassination attempt. So I don't think it was just angry people who were brainwashed by the media. There are plenty of them out there. There are people who tried to attack Trump. I have a clip of one of them in there where a guy tries to rush the stage. You may have a good case that he was motivated by the media, but this particular assassination attempt in Butler, this was a coordinated effort amongst a group of people. It wasn't a lone nut assassin.
Right. Okay. So let's. I'm going to play
July
this next
8th,
clip
Thomas
here.
Crooks conducted
July
an internet search for AGR International. This is actually super important because the government says that on July 6th, Crooks didn't know where Trump would speak, but on the 8th, he did. On July 6th, Crooks is doing internet searches for where will Trump speak at the Butler Farm Show, but on the 8th, he's Googling AGR International. It was not public knowledge on July 8th where the stage for that rally would be located. So how could Crooks know that AGR would be near Trump's stage on July 8th? He couldn't, unless someone was feeding him inside information.
Okay, so this is where we start to get into now what you're talking about. I don't think Brian or John Pleshnik here with us, I don't think anybody was aware of this, but, and you can go into more detail on this, but Crooks, apparently, there was, where they normally have the event held at Butler County Fairgrounds, they changed that location and put it out more into the field for Trump. And so on the 6th, Crooks was checking his computer and searching around the Butler County Fairgrounds, and then on the 8th, he was just gearing in only on the AGR building, right? And
yes.
But no public knowledge that it was going to be moved and that the AGR building would be in perfect alignment. So that's like highly unlikely, all right? I mean, that's...
You did an excellent job of zeroing in on one of the earliest pieces of evidence that Crooks had help, and that is that on July 6th, he didn't know where the stage was going to be, and on July 8th, he did. And the place where the Trump campaign put that stage, with recommendations from the Secret Service, the place where they put that stage is not where the stage is normally at when they have big events at the farm show. It's out in the middle of an open field, which doesn't make any sense because it's going to be the middle of July, it's going to be 90 degrees, there's no shade. They had numerous people that were in the crowd that were overcome by heat that day, and anybody from the outside who's trying to figure out where Trump is going to speak is not going to come up with the AGR building is close to that. You would think that it would be way over on the other side of the farm show. But on the 8th, Crooks is Googling AGR. Not on the 6th, not on the 7th, on the 8th. And the thing is, on the 8th, that's when the Secret Service meets with the Butler Farm Show personnel for the first time and discusses stage location. And then later that day, they meet with local and state law enforcement and also have that same discussion. Someone at one of those two meetings most likely fed that information to Crooks and or the people that were working with Crooks. Because it's undeniable that on the 8th, he knows where the stage is going to be because he's Googling AGR International.
Right. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me because you're saying on the very same day.
Well, let me correct you. I'm not saying this. That information comes directly from the Congressional Task Force report on the assassination. I didn't make this up. I didn't uncover this. This is what the government says he did. And if that's true, he didn't know on the 6th, but he knew on the 8th. So that's information. I got
you. But on the 8th, they were discussing where to have it.
Yes.
And then later in the evening on the 8th, he's on his computer looking at the AGR building.
Well, they don't say what time he does his internet search on the 8th. They just say on the 8th, he's doing internet searches for AGR Internationals. If we knew that time, we could probably pinpoint which of those two meetings were the people that leaked it from. If he's doing an early search, then it's the early meeting. If he's doing a late search, it could be either one of those two meetings. But that's a great thing to know. The report doesn't say.
And it also is a great thing that tells you that there is he is working with somebody.
Yes.
That's impossible. It's a 20-year-old kid who lives with his parents in that house. That's impossible for him to know that. So,
yes.
One quick question. I'm going to play another clip. I'll get some of the other guys asking too. But did anybody bring this up? Did you investigate on this? Talk to anyone? What's the rationale behind that? Because he couldn't possibly have known.
So you've identified one of the big smoking gun bombshells that we have in this movie. There are several. No one is talking about any of these big bombshells except a very few media outlets. Yourself, some other local radio stations, and Newsmax and Real America's Voice. All of the major news networks, all of whom I've contacted specifically and spoken to people there, except for CBS, all of them were very excited until they watched it, and then they said, we can't talk about this. This story can't go on. So there's news blackout on what is in the actual evidence that's in my documentary. If I had made a documentary that was just like interviewing people who were there that day and talking about their feelings and things like that, I probably would have been on every station. But what I did was sort of a CSI investigation and said, here's the evidence. Look for yourself. The story we've been told is not true. No major news outlet wants to touch that.
He goes and purchases 50 rounds of 5.56 ammunition at a local gun store between 1:47 and 1:55 p.m. But that's a big problem, because later that day, when the police search his dead body on the roof of AGR, there's no wallet or ID. Thomas Crooks had to have ID when he bought ammo at 1:47. So who took his ID? Hell, who took his wallet?
All right, so the plot thickens. So fill us in on that, if you would, JD, and get these other guys in. But what is the significance of all that?
So we know for certain that he doesn't have ID, that the body on the roof of AGR does not have identification when it's searched. We don't know for sure whether or not he has a wallet, because there's no mention of a wallet in the Congressional Task Force report or what the FBI has said, but they specifically say he did not have ID. And in the state of Pennsylvania, technically you can buy ammunition without an ID. However, there's a federal law that supersedes that says you have to be, it's either 18 or 21, I don't remember. So unless he's buying ammunition from someone who knows him personally, it's unlikely that he would not have been ID'd when he bought ammunition. And you gotta have a credit card or cash to buy ammunition, and if he didn't have a wallet, he couldn't do that. So there are an awful lot of things that Crooks would have had to have with him to do what the government has claimed he did that day. He would have to have ID. He would have to have money. He would have to have car keys. None of those things appear to be in or around the body on the roof of AGR, which makes it almost impossible for that person on the roof to have done all the things that the government claims he did. Now, he could have disposed of his ID, he could have disposed of his car keys, but then how was he going to get back in the car to escape? How was he going to get in the car to arm the bombs, which were not armed? So there's a lot of things, some which we get into the movie and some we don't, but not having ID, not having a wallet, not having car keys, as far as we know, those are big red flags that someone else was helping him. Oh, by the way, there's 2 vehicles that have explosives. There's no idea how he got both vehicles by the farm show when there's supposed to be roadblocks and all this stuff. So as the movie goes on, these little things that are missing become more and more prominent because you can't do the things the government claims he did without them.
Yeah, and he also bought a ladder too, I think. But
the ladder's a big.
That just sort of disappeared.
The ladder's a big point of controversy right now because since the movie came out, there has been one person in particular who's also investigated this, who has claimed that the ladder actually was recovered somewhere else. Now, I've asked him to verify where he's getting this information from, and he has refused to do that so far. But the ladder may have been recovered somewhere else. But what I know for certain is it wasn't recovered at AGR. It wasn't recovered in his car. It wasn't recovered in his parents' house. And the report, the congressional report, makes a big deal about him buying this ladder early that morning on the 13th. And he even has the receipt from Home Depot for the ladder in his pocket. But he never uses it at AGR. No one ever sees him with it at AGR. It's not recovered at AGR. And according to this other person, who may or may not be telling the truth, it was abandoned on the property of an abandoned business a long way away from AGR. So if he's going to dispose of this ladder, why does he buy it in the first place? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big ladder, too. I was wondering how he even got it in his car. His car's not very big. I don't even know how he fits it in that
well, there's the FBI hasn't said exactly what car he has either. They show a picture of his car, what they claim is his car, and a trunk, which it couldn't fit in the trunk, but there's also this white van that's sort of unaccounted for that Fox News and the Daily Mail claim belongs to Thomas Crooks. So he could have put it in this white van. There's just so many unanswered questions and so many unasked questions by the media about this that we really don't know. As I say in the tagline for the movie, you think you know what happened that day. You're wrong.
No, you don't. You don't know at all.
No one outside the FBI knows what really happened that day, and the FBI is not talking.
The FBI is not talking. I just get you in for a second, Brian. What do you think about it? This is a pretty wacky story. It gets even crazier, believe me.
Yeah. What comes to mind is I'm old enough to remember the Kennedy assassination. I remember a friend of mine did a lot of research, and his response to me was that Oswald never fired a shot. And when Oswald, was asked, and he said he was a patsy, and I'm thinking the same thing right here. Crooks was, could have been set up as a patsy, and did he really fire the shots? I don't know. Maybe our guest can tell us if there were multiple shooters out there, but the whole thing does not seem right. How a 20-year-old would be involved in this. No. Somebody set him up.
I think so, too. I'm going to get John in here for a minute. If John has a question, and we're going to just go chronological. We'll get to the whole 2-shooter thing or 3-shooter thing here in a few minutes, but this is kind of bizarre. I mean, you're going to uncover a lot of information here, John, that no one has ever told us about this.
So for those of us listening from Lake County and Northeast Ohio, I think it's worth noting Mr. Wilcox referenced the Congressional Task Force on the Butler assassination attempt. Our local Congressman Dave Joyce, actually sat on that task force. So I think that's an important side note. But I'm honestly not surprised. I think from square one, I would expect that someone involved was probably codenamed Come On Man, or the big guy, and he was probably waiting for 10% of his share of the ladder and the bullets. But I'm eager to see the research that's been done. I know I'm coming at it from a little bit of a preset perspective, but I think it's pretty darned obvious that the internal polls showed Kamala Harris and Joe Biden it was an unwinnable campaign by this point last year, and the powers that be in Washington, D.C. wanted Trump dead.
You are so right on that. That is excellent analysis. All right, well, we're going to move right into here. Let's look at these drones. Let's go into this section here. This is
At 3:50 p.m., Crooks flew a drone over the farm show for 11 minutes. If he recorded any video or pictures on that day, they would have been stored on a micro SD memory card inside the drone. But when the cops found the drone in Crooks' vehicle the next day, the card slot is empty. As far as we know, no memory card from the drone was found on Crooks, at his home, or in his vehicle. So, who took the drone's memory card? But when the Secret Service CUAS agent activated his drone detection equipment at 11 a.m., the equipment failed. He spent the next 5 hours trying to troubleshoot his gear by calling a 1-800 tech support line. You see, it turns out that agent had no formal training in counter-drone operations, and a more experienced agent was scheduled to perform this duty, but he was replaced at the last minute. And even worse, additional anti-drone equipment that could actually force drones out of the sky was requested for the rally, but that request was denied by unnamed Secret Service superiors.
All right, so the plot thickens a lot here, so apparently Crooks is flying a drone for 20 minutes. Do we know it was really Crooks who was flying the drone? But then they were supposed to have drone interceptor equipment on location, but it all malfunctioned. And the guy who was the expert just happened to take that day off, so they replaced him with a novice. And it took him 5 hours to figure out what was wrong with it. Of course, by then, Trump's ready to start speaking. But there's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. Come on.
The drone, so the Secret Service drone detection equipment not being operational is a huge red flag, because if it was operational, they would have detected Crooks' drone flight, and they would have sent somebody to investigate it, because the equipment tracks where the drone operator is, and the police would have questioned him. And at that point, Crooks had ammunition, a weapon, and explosives either on his person or in his vehicle. If the cops had found this guy, and apparently whoever was operating the drone was doing it in the vicinity of his own vehicle, because he put the drone and the controller in his vehicle when he was done. If the cops had discovered any of that, no one would have ever been hurt that day, because they would have arrested him immediately. You can't show up to a political event with a gun, with ammunition, and with explosives in your car and not get arrested. So the fact that they didn't detect him is huge. And the fact that the equipment started working because they replaced a faulty cable an hour after Crooks stopped flying his drone is just too much of a coincidence to me to be an accident. Someone had to know that equipment wouldn't work, or else they never would have sent Crooks out there with a drone to snoop on what was going on there, because it would have been caught. And he had all this incriminating evidence on him. It's a huge red flag to me that he was coordinating with someone who was at the very least knowledgeable of Secret Service activities.
Let me ask you a question on this. I was a little puzzled with it. But the drone activity for Crooks, now let's go under two assumptions. Let's go under the first assumption that he's going to do this by himself. He's just this 20-year-old kid that wants to shoot Trump. So he's flying the drone. What's the purpose of flying that drone? What is he trying to do with it?
Yeah, I can't work under that assumption anymore, because I know he wasn't acting alone that day. If he was, I know that that's not the case. I have undeniable proof of a second gunman who was shooting that day, so I know he didn't act alone. I can't say for certain how many people assisted him or exactly what their roles were, although I have suspicions. But I know he wasn't alone that day, so I can't make that assumption anymore.
But if you were not working alone, if you had other people helping you, let's say FBI or someone, what would be the purpose of them flying the drone? What is it that they're trying to get? What kind of information?
I think it's most likely that the drone surveillance is to figure out exactly where the Secret Service counter snipers were, because this is the first Donald Trump rally of that campaign where the Secret Service actually assigned counter snipers. And that was because back in June 2024, the Secret Service and the intelligence community actually got information that Iran had hired assassination teams to assassinate Trump. So the Secret Service knew that there was this credible threat of a sniper killing Trump. And that's why, for the very first time, they assigned these counter snipers. And they didn't show up until the day before because they were so busy on other things with Joe Biden and his wife and everything. So his counter sniper team didn't show up until July 12th, the day before the rally, which means anybody who's spying on them or has inside information might not know exactly where they're going to set up the day of the rally. And from what the Congressional Task Force report says, those counter sniper teams didn't really plan much that day. So they just kind of winged it and said, you go there, you go there. Where are the local counter snipers? Well, they're over in these other buildings. We're not even going to visit them, and we're not going to share radios and all this stuff. So if you don't know exactly where the counter snipers are that day, you can't really put a sniper on the roof of AGR. So in my estimation, the reason he flies the drone, whoever flies the drone, is to find out where those counter sniper teams, Secret Service and local, are deployed around the area, because the Secret Service was supposed to take charge of that, but they didn't really. So only a few people knew exactly where all the sniper teams were around the farm show. And if you're going to put your sniper to kill Trump on one of those roofs, you got to know he's got a fighting chance. He's not going to be shot immediately. And so that's, in my opinion, why someone's flying a drone right before Trump takes the stage, basically.
Interesting.
Like an hour.
That's interesting.
Like a couple hours before Trump takes the stage.
Okay, so if he was, if I'm going to use FBI. I know you're not using that term, but I'm going to use it. I'll just say FBI. So if the FBI wanted to nail Trump, they needed some of that information, aerial view information, as to where some of the snipers, Trump's snipers, would be located and stuff. That's interesting. So that's interesting. That kind of fills in a few gaps, because then you have the one guy who's the expert. He's immediately pulled away. And then you have a novice, and they give him a faulty equipment, and he's there for hours and hours trying to figure out what's wrong with it. The whole thing is just so corny. Let's go to this.
Either the Secret Service is completely inept and they should all be fired because they're no good at their job, or they were purposefully inept. I don't have evidence to prove one way or the other, but there's really only two options. Either they're no good at their job, all of them are no good at their job, or there were people in the Secret Service who were inclined to not be good at their job, if I can be diplomatic.
On the morning of July 13th, there were 3 local snipers stationed inside an AGR building north of the farm show. One of them had to leave before Trump arrived. That left 2 snipers inside AGR. One was a Beaver County sniper, and the other was a Butler County sniper. The Beaver County sniper is the one who actually photographs crooks. I got my phone, I pulled out the picture. The first one is of his back, and then the second picture, I'm like, come on, man, turn your head. And then he finally turned. And then I took the second one, which is the side view.
All right, so there's 2 guys inside the AGR. That's the AGR building, correct? So there's
AGR is a complex of buildings. There's 9 buildings on the AGR property. They're in one of the tallest buildings, and then Crooks climbs up.
The morning of July 13th.
Let me just show this picture here. So these 2 guys are actually, they're not on top of the roof. They're actually inside the building.
Yes, they're inside.
They're on the second floor. And so it was the Beaver County sniper who took the picture of Crooks down below. But he's actually taken a picture of him throughout this window. He's pretty close, but he's taken a picture of him.
Yes.
Now you have 2 of them. You have the Beaver and the Butler.
Yes.
And the way to remember it is, you know how in all those old movies the butler always did it? Think of it in terms like this: the butler did it.
Okay.
Okay. Because I picked this up after watching a couple times of your video, and I'm convinced the butler did it. But go ahead, John.
So, Joe, I have one reaction here, which is to the denial of additional resources, the refusal to assign a more experienced personnel or to fix or get new equipment when requested. This is very reminiscent of what happened in January 6, which we now know was clearly orchestrated by high-level politicians in Washington, D.C., none of whom supported President Donald J. Trump. I remember right after January 6, we had a roundtable luncheon in Paynesville, and Congressman Joyce spoke on what had happened, given that he was there. And he said point blank, Speaker Pelosi refused to put out the Capitol Police. And in his mind, the only reason you would hold back that security is if you wanted to cause a riot. You wanted to allow a riot or some other protest to happen. And so once again, we see withholding of resources. We see deliberate attempts to not have the needed personnel for safety on site. It's ringing the alarm bells of January 6th, which we know was a Democrat scandal, not a Republican one.
All right. Yeah, a lot of similarities there. A lot of similarities. I'm going over to Brian for a second. You have any thoughts, Brian, on anything?
Yeah, well, I do have a question. The two, the Butler and the Beaver County snipers, they were on the second floor. Crooks was on the building adjacent to them on the roof?
Yes. Yeah, Crooks, or whoever that is on a building in front of them, and the two snipers are on a building behind them up higher. They have a perfect view of where the body ended up on that roof. They should have seen that person crawling into position, just like all the people on the ground who were videotaping Crooks or whoever that is crawling into position. Those two snipers should have been there and should have seen that. Now, one of those snipers, the Beaver County sniper, had already left. He had gone downstairs to try and follow Crooks. So there was only one sniper in that building when Crooks, or whoever that person is, crawls into position and takes those shots. But that person should have, that sniper, the Butler County sniper, should have seen Crooks. There's no logical explanation why he didn't, because he watched Crooks out that same window earlier that day. So he had been looking out that window all the time. He knew that this guy was evading police. He should have seen them. There's no logical explanation why he didn't, but he claims he never saw him till right before the Secret Service shot him.
Yeah, and that's why I say
that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me, really. That they're saying that they didn't see him. I would agree with Mr. Wilcox that something was wrong there. Now, you said, Mr. Wilcox, you said that it may not have been Crooks on that building.
Yeah, here's another big bombshell that proves that everything we think we know about the Butler assassination attempt is wrong. The government has provided zero evidence that that body is Thomas Matthew Crooks. Zero. Everybody thinks it's him, everybody assumes it's him, but the government's never proven it, and they've never even offered any evidence. None. The FBI report says, the congressional report says the FBI claims that they identified Thomas Matthew Crooks as the suspect at 9:20 p.m. on July 13th because they traced the serial number on the rifle and it came back to Crooks' father. Well, why wasn't Crooks' father the suspect at 9:20 p.m.? Why do they immediately jump and say, oh, it's not the person that the rifle is registered to, it's somebody else? And the Crooks family has at least two people in it. Crooks has a sister as well. So why not his sister? Why not his mother? Why did they immediately go and say, nope, it's Thomas Matthew Crooks at 9:20? They don't say. They don't say that they ever took fingerprints. They don't say that they ever did a DNA test. But if they did either one of those two things, they would have to have someone to match that to. And they didn't have any of that at 9:20 p.m. on the 13th. They didn't even speak to Crooks' father until 2 hours later. So Crooks' father should have been the suspect at 9:20 p.m., but he wasn't. They immediately identify Thomas Matthew Crooks as the suspect, and there's no way they could have known it at 9:20 p.m., and they've never offered any evidence that it is him. So we don't know who that body was. Oh, by the way, that body was cremated on July 22nd, so we're never going to ever be able to know definitively who that is. And Crooks' parents, they have never confirmed nor denied that that body was their son. They just sent it off to be cremated. Oh, and even worse, on July 14th, after the body was removed from the roof, the FBI washed all the blood and DNA off that roof. That's crazy. The FBI destroyed the evidence the day after the body was removed. So there's no possible way to positively identify that body anymore. So anybody who calls that Thomas Matthew Crooks is making it up. There's no evidence that it's him. We don't know who that is.
It is kind of
strange.
Am I
correct, Mr. Wilcox, that on the building that, let's say, the shooter or Mr. Crooks or whoever was there, in that building, that lower building, there were police officers, more than one police officer in that building, and where he's on the roof.
At the time of the shooting, the Beaver County sniper who came downstairs to try and find Crooks, he was directly beneath Crooks in that building, but he's the only one that we know for sure was in that building at the time of the shooting. After the shooting, or during the shooting, he runs outside and gets locked out, and other people have to let him back in. So after the shooting, there were other police officers in there, but at the time of the shooting, the only police officer in that lower building that the body is on top of is the Beaver County sniper, who should have been up on the second floor looking for Crooks, but he wasn't.
Crooks'
he abandoned
rifle.
his post and
Notice
he left
anything strange?
Sniper rifle.
That rifle doesn't fit in that backpack, not even if you disassemble it. So how did Crooks get that rifle onto the roof of AGR without anyone seeing it if it wasn't in the backpack?
I mean, that's a good point. It doesn't fit in the backpack. It's like the, who was that? Simps.
This is Pennsylvania State Police dash cam footage of Crooks running across the roof of AGR just minutes before he fired at Trump. The state police officer who was in that vehicle says that Crooks did not have a rifle with him at this time. Less than a minute later, a Butler police detective pulls himself up onto the roof of...
Now this Butler detective, he pulls himself up and then he sees Crooks and then he falls back down, watch.
AGR, and he sees Crooks with a rifle pointed at the stage. Where did that rifle come from? If
now
Crooks isn't carrying it here, then it has to already be on the roof waiting for him.
Yeah, so the whole thing, yeah, it's a total setup. And I'll tell you one other thing, too. I think maybe it's the next clip where there's actually a body camera on that detective when he goes up there.
Yep.
So I took it frame by frame, I can't do it on this TV, on this video, but I did it with the editing equipment, just frame by frame. And there's a few frames there where you can see up on the roof. I don't see Crooks anywhere. I don't see anybody up there. So if Crooks is up there, he's pretty far away. But the whole narrative is that Crooks turned around and pointed the long rifle at him. He got scared. He fell back down. But those, you can see clearly for a couple clips, nobody up there that I could see unless he's further away. You know, again, if you could see Crooks literally pointing the gun at him, I think that lends some credibility. But when you don't see anybody, it gets more and more suspicious all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, that police body camera footage isn't revealing. It shows that the detective pulled himself up and then fell back down. He claims that Crooks turned around and pointed the gun at the detective, and that's why he let go and jumped and fell back down. Maybe that's true, maybe that isn't. But if it is true, that means Crooks ran across the roof, pulled a gun out of a backpack that can't fit it, assembled it, loaded it, aimed at the stage. A cop pops up behind him. He turns around, points the gun at the cop. The cop falls down. He turns back to Trump and shoots right then. And he shoots 3 shots that are timed, that are cautious, that are aimed, and the very first one hits the president, almost kills him. That is not something, in my opinion, that an untrained 20-year-old college student can do. That requires training. Just to get your heart rate down so that you can take an accurate shot is something that you have to train somebody to do. And if a cop pops up behind you right before you take that shot, it's highly unlikely that if you're not a trained sniper, that you're going to be able to do that. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense about that sequence of events. And, you know, they're all there if you would just look at them. It leads me to believe that there's a much more trained sniper in that same area who's taking those first 3 shots. And at the end of the, you know, much later on in the movie, we talk about the sound and the echoes and the timing that prove or indicate very strongly that the 2 sets of shots come from different places.
The Beaver County sniper loses sight of Crooks from his window as Crooks moves around the building. And when he goes downstairs to the first floor trying to find Crooks, he leaves his sniper rifle behind. That means the Butler County sniper was all alone on the 2nd floor when the shooting starts. But you'd think since he's actively searching for Crooks at that time, he would have seen him out the window crawling.
Look at the view right there. That's the roof that Crooks was on.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, come on.
If you play it a little longer, I actually
on the roof with his gun. Since the windows on the 2nd floor have a perfect view of where Crooks was.
But
apparently,
both should have been there. They both should have seen him, but they didn't. Only one of them was there at the time, but the one who was there, the Butler County sniper, absolutely should have seen him.
Oh, without a doubt.
Sniper never did.
He wasn't wearing camouflage that would, you know, blend in with the rooftop.
No.
And Joe, look at that rooftop. Remember the narrative we received from the Secret Service? That it was so slanted, it was too dangerous to station a sniper or a counter sniper there. Right there. I mean, my goodness, that almost looks flat.
It is almost flat. It was too dangerous.
You need to be a trained commando to balance on a slope like that. My goodness.
Yeah,
In fairness to former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheeto, she was actually talking about the building that the snipers are inside of, which is taller and a little bit steeper, but it's not anywhere near the roof that the Secret Service counter snipers are actually on, the barn roofs, are the steepest roofs. So she was lying. She knew that she was lying when she said it. But that's probably why she was one of the few who got fired. Nobody else
did.
Only her and her deputy got fired. Everybody else is still working there, as far as I can tell.
And they shouldn't be fired. There should be manslaughter charges.
All the other people in the Secret Service that screwed up that day, as far as I can tell, they're all still working there that day. And that's, in my opinion, one of the reasons why Trump is between a rock and a hard place. Because if he were to call out the people that are protecting him every single day as being incompetent, which they were, that would make it very hard for him to trust them to protect him going forward. So he's really between a rock and a hard place as far as calling out the Secret Service and holding them to account, because they're still protecting the lives of himself and his family today.
Along the AGR fence line, they saw Crooks crawling into position.
Look at people see Crooks up there crawling around, but all the Secret Service and all these snipers and everything, nobody can see him. Apparently.
Some of them even videotaped it. The Butler police detective who climbed up on the roof and came face to face with Crooks and...
There is you can barely see it, but if I go back, I don't know if I can stop it in time. Probably not. But you can, if you go slide by slide, I don't see anyone up there. There's like one or two.
Face with Crooks and his rifle fell back down.
Levels
and then he ran
over. So most police body cameras, they wear it on their chest, kind of where I'm wearing my microphone. And if you just peek your head up over the edge of the roof like this, your body camera's never going to get up there to see that. And that's apparently all he did. He didn't pull himself up like this. He was up like this. And there's multiple different levels of roof there. So from that angle, you cannot see where Crooks was laying down from that body camera.
Around the building shouting on his radio that there was a male on the roof.
So why is this guy running around shouting that there's a man on the roof? I thought he was a trained police officer. Is that what they train you to do? Just go out and start running around and yell and hope that somebody comes to the rescue?
He's actually saying on the radio, he's shouting it over the radio, there's a man on the roof with a long gun. So he's saying it over the radio, and the one sniper that's still in that building, the Butler County sniper, has that radio. So he should have heard that. He should have immediately looked out the window, saw Crooks and shot, or saw whoever, and shot him dead. So that's the point of him running around. He had a radio. He was saying, person on the roof with a long gun. That Butler County sniper should have looked out there and shot him dead. He never should have gotten a shot off at Trump.
Secret Service should have pulled Trump off the stage, but they never did. The Butler County sniper also claims he never saw Crooks out the window in the crucial minutes when Crooks was moving into position. When the Beaver County sniper finally makes his way back up to the second floor, he finds the Butler sniper leaning out the window with his rifle pointed at Crooks' body.
I got a question for you. If he's leaning out that window, does he have a clear shot at Trump?
Yes.
But that's my hypothesis here, that he was one of the gunmen. He's right directly in line with where Crooks was. Let me put this back.
He's not exactly in line with where the body was on the roof. He's a little bit west of that, but there are multiple roofs of AGR that could hold the second or third snipers, and that all of those windows in that building could have been a place where another sniper could shoot from. Yes, including the one that the Butler County sniper is leaning out of. So absolutely, he needed to be treated as a suspect, and as far as I can tell, he was not.
I got a couple more clips. Let's get
Number
through
46 is missing. The Congressional Task Force released their final report in December 2024. They also released transcripts of 46 state, local, and federal law enforcement officials that they interviewed for the report. And you can see it here on the Task Force website, 46 transcripts. And here they all are, linked below. But there's one huge problem. As of today, July 13th, 2025, there are only 45 transcripts. Number 46 is missing. Well, of all the federal, state...
And number 46, guys, just so he's going to tell you right here, but number 46 is the first guy on top of the shed roof at the body of Thomas Crooks. This is the one who was never interviewed, and they don't even know who this guy was, apparently.
And local law enforcement officers who were on scene that day, one of the most important was the very first officer to reach Crooks' body after he was shot. The other police on the roof all testified that the Washington County SWAT guy was the first person on the roof, the first person to touch Crooks' body, and the only one to search Crooks' pockets. This makes the Washington County SWAT guy a crucial witness, and certainly someone who the task force would interview, right? But they didn't. And if they did, they seem to have misplaced his transcript. And even more disturbing, the task force doesn't even seem to know his name.
All right, so it's crazy. That is getting very crazy. Do you just want to elaborate on that for a minute? That's crazy.
Every day, so we went to Butler in September 2024, and we found all this evidence shortly thereafter, and I had been editing it for 6 months or so. And every day I would wake up, and the first thing I would do is check the Congressional Task Force website to see if they published this 46th transcript. And they never did, and I couldn't understand, how can we trust them to unravel this mystery if they can't even get that right? Like, it's on their website, 46 transcripts. There's only 45. It's so, fix that. Before you tell me anything else, you got to at least get that right. And I'm just hypothesizing that the one who's missing is this Washington County SWAT guy. But I don't know for sure because it's not there. I don't know who it is. But whoever it is, it's missing, and it's in their report, and it's on their website that they have 46, but there's only 45 of them there. I haven't looked in a while. I haven't looked since the anniversary, but on the anniversary, I double checked, and it was still not there.
Before Trump arrived at the farm show, over 100 people were gathered along the AGR fence outside the farm show watching the event. An unknown man suddenly appeared and began yelling at the crowd of people, telling them they had to leave the AGR property. Witnesses said he claimed to be the owner of AGR. The spectators began to refer to him as Red Truck Guy because he was driving a red pickup truck. The man's name is Jeffrey Bester, and he's not the owner of AGR, but he is an employee, and that brings up some crucial questions. Most importantly, number one, who told him to chase away the spectators?
And those spectators were kind of blocking the view of a possible sniper, correct?
So they could have been. It depends on where that sniper is. If the sniper was at the ground level, then those spectators along the fence were blocking a sniper's view. For the people up on the roof or higher, those spectators are not blocking the roof, but they are witnesses. When gunfire erupts behind them, every one of them turns around, and a lot of them videotape what's happening. So Jeffrey Bester was definitely intentionally or unintentionally trying to get rid of witnesses, some of whom saw that person crawling on the roof and alerted law enforcement and tried to stop him. So those witnesses could have stopped that gunman if the law enforcement had acted a little bit quicker. They didn't, and they didn't stop him. But either way, it's very suspicious that this man was out there doing this, and he's not even mentioned in the Congressional Task Force report. Not at all. Not one mention of Jeffrey Bester.
Okay. I got a couple more clips. I'm going to just get through them
Before
real quick
Trump
here.
arrived at the farm show, over 100 people photographed the entire area with high-resolution cameras, create an accurate 3D model using a process called photogrammetry, and hire an expert to trace the bullet trajectories back to their origin. So that's just what we did. Less than 2 months after the assassination attempt, the NewsSpotter team hired a drone operator to photograph the entire AGR complex and the farm show area. We also scanned several structures using a LiDAR sensor. Then we tracked down the owner of a piece of construction equipment that was struck by one of the bullets that day. That piece of equipment's called a telehandler. Those are the big yellow forklift type vehicles holding up the speakers on either side of the stage. One of the bullets struck the south telehandler's hydraulic line, which caused hydraulic fluid to spray out and the speaker array to come crashing down. The owners of the telehandler allowed us to scan it and also provided pictures of the bullet hole in the hydraulic pipe. And here it is, folks. The only bullet hole from the Trump assassination attempt that has ever been seen by the public. Look at this footage of the hydraulic fluid spraying out of the bullet hole again. See where the spray goes? It goes back towards the barns behind the stage. It doesn't go towards President Trump. The U.S. Secret Service sniper team leader on that barn, in his transcribed interview on page 140, says, quote, "Apparently, a round had hit one of the hydraulic fluid hoses that was holding up the screens and speakers. That sprayed all over top of us." You can also see the wet ground on this overhead photograph. It clearly points east towards the barns, not north towards the stage.
Yeah. So a stray bullet spraying all that water in the wrong direction, that's another red flag.
This is really, you're getting really now to the heart of the forensic evidence that proves beyond the shadow of a doubt there was at least one additional shooter. This bullet that hits the hydraulic line, it's a 1 in a million shot. It never should have happened, but it hits it, and it hits it dead center. And that means that the way the hydraulic fluid sprays out points back to where the bullet came from. And it doesn't point towards the body on the roof of AGR. It points 90 degrees east towards the roof where the second counter sniper team from the Secret Service was perched. And those two counter snipers both testified that bullets were coming past them. One of those bullets hit that telehandler, and that's why that hydraulic fluid was spraying out. So the testimony plus the bullet hole plus the spray pattern of the hydraulic fluid prove beyond the shadow of a doubt there was another shooter, because the person on the roof of AGR could not shoot a bullet that makes a 90-degree turn and hits that telehandler. It's impossible.
Whose video footage is the key to understanding what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. A man who is, in my opinion, the modern-day version of Emil Zapruder. Let's discuss the real Dave Stewart. Dave Stewart lived in Butler, Pennsylvania, near the farm show grounds. On July 13th, he was working at Sheetz gas station just down the road from AGR. And when his shift ended around 4:30, he walked over to get a look at the event from outside the fence.
How many people you think's out there? Look at all that. Jam-packed.
A lot of the video we have that shows what happened at AGR that day is thanks to Dave Stewart and his cell phone. He photographed the spectators by the fence. He captured the rally from outside. He photographed Jeffrey Bester. And he even got the bullets being fired from the roof. It's audio from his cell phone camera that helps prove that the two groups of shots might be from different places. That's Dave running there in the red shirt while the gun fires over his head. After the shooting, Dave and 17 others were detained by local law enforcement and questioned by the U.S. Secret Service and the FBI. The FBI seized his cell phone and refused to give it back for days. When Dave finally got his phone back, he posted all of the videos he took that day on YouTube. He got a couple thousand hits. A month passed. Then on August 22nd, when Dave was working at Sheetz, Jeffrey Bester walked in to buy some beer. Dave recognized him as the man who yelled at him and the others by the AGR fence, and Dave confronted him.
Excuse me, sir. Do you drive a red truck?
Yes, I do.
You're the red truck guy? Is that an AGR hat on your head? You're the red truck guy! I found him! Clearing the line of fire, were ya?
Clearing the line of fire.
Wow.
Do you hear what he said right there? You're the AGR guy, clearing the line of fire for those bullets that come from that other direction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let JD give a couple comments, and then I'm going to get John and Brian give a couple comments, and then we got to get to our next guest. But I think that this has been such a fantastic eye-opener, and boy, we don't even know the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this, and you're revealing it to us. But what about that whole thing with Jeffrey Stewart? Did you want to comment on that at all?
So it's Dave Stewart. He's the modern day Zapruder. I wouldn't know much of what I know that day without him. He really was an amazing person, and he videotaped all this stuff, and he just happened to work at the Sheetz gas station where Jeffrey Bester came in to buy beer on the 18th. So without him, we really wouldn't know a lot of what we do about what happened that day. And Dave Stewart was so scared for his safety after he posted those videos, he actually went into hiding. He's still in hiding today. So the modern Zapruder is in hiding because of what he saw and what he photographed, and what the FBI and the state police of Pennsylvania did to him after that. So they have hounded and harassed him, and now Dave Stewart is in hiding because of everything that he saw. He's still in hiding today.
Amazing. Well, Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my comment is I'm definitely going to take a look at the whole documentary. It's sort of fascinating, and congratulate you, Mr. Wilcox. Very nice job, and I hope that the average citizen, can really get the truth out of this thing. But it sure sounds like FBI, CIA, or some nefarious organization doesn't want this to get out. And by cremating the body, within 24 hours, or
it was
not
they,
really
on
knowing
the 8th,
if that was.
It was a couple days after. But here, to your point, sir, there's definitely nefarious organizations that don't want the average person to know about this. But unlike the Epstein affair and the January 6th pipe bomber and all these other things, we don't have evidence. We don't have the smoking gun there. We have the smoking gun here that proves that the FBI story of Thomas Crook's lone gunman is a lie. We have it. That bullet hole proves it. So, in my opinion, this is the one conspiracy that we can press and force the government for answers, because they can't deny the evidence. And they haven't even tried. They just pretend like no one knows this. But anybody who's seen the video knows that the evidence is out there. So if we pressure our government to give us the truth about July 13th, 2024, then we can get the ball rolling and maybe uncover some of these other mysteries that they're keeping from us.
Excellent. John, what'd you think?
Well, I start by saying I think just like September 11th, every American remembers where they were when they tried to assassinate our president. I remember I was at a baseball game waiting in line for a President James A. Garfield bobblehead with a judge who's a friend of mine. And I remember looking at him and saying, Jeff, isn't it crazy that we're standing in line for a Republican president's bobblehead of a president who was assassinated when they tried to assassinate our president, Donald Trump? And we're just standing there in this surreal environment, holding our Garfield bobbleheads as we're trying to get updates on our phone, praying that President Trump is okay, praying for everybody in Butler County. It was a crazy moment that every American, whether they support our president or not, I guarantee you they remember where they were. And so we want the truth. When a moment is burned into your consciousness, and really the world's consciousness in such a significant way, you want to know what happened that day. And I think it's fair to say that this documentary only reinforces the sense that we all had that we weren't being given the truth. I mean, a suicidal kid trying to shoot a head of state is not worried about using a drone to identify counter snipers. That kid doesn't even know they exist, nor is he worried about getting out alive. So the fact that you have any effort to map out the area and to hide evidence makes it highly suspect that some random kid is responsible or solely responsible for what happened. And I want to say what I think we're all thinking. It's no coincidence that shortly after the failed assassination attempt, President Joe Biden drops out of the race. He was waiting for his one last chance to win. Let's be real here. That was the Hail Mary pass. They knew they couldn't win fair and square. They'd stolen the 2020 election, and their last shot was to kill Trump. And I mean their last shot, literally and figuratively. And when it failed, I think that's when Biden finally said, I got no tricks up my sleeve left. I'm done.
Yeah, it is just so incredible. And we keep forgetting that bullet grazed the side of his head. And he was just so miraculously lucky.
He should be dead. There's no way that he should have survived that shot. I don't think Crooks shot that shot. I think there was a professional somewhere in that same area that took that shot. It's too good a shot. Crooks' weapon has an unmagnified sight on it. It's the wrong sight. It's a red dot. It's just everything about it. So Trump should be dead. There's no doubt about that. Every day since then has been a gift for him because he never should have survived that day. It was well planned, well executed. It was really only divine intervention that prevented him from dying.
Well, JD, thank you again. God bless your efforts. And so it's whoshottrump.us, right?
Correct. Yep.
So go watch the movie tonight if you want to. www.whoshottrump.us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for talking about this. I really appreciate it, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Fantastic job.
Terrific.
Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah, fantastic.
God bless you too.
Fantastic, terrific job. Really quite the job. Wow. That was something else. Matthew Hebebrand, how are you tonight? Good to see you.
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, it's our pleasure. I'm glad that you found the time to come on board with us. I'm just trying to clear my mind a little bit. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but that whole documentary thing was
kind of hard to follow up on that.
Yeah. I know it's not.
I will
it's not
say,
gonna be easy,
I think it is important.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to mention Corey Comparatore. As a former prosecutor, listening to all that, I'm putting together some of the evidence, but I'm also thinking about the comparatores. One of my main things as a former prosecutor was looking out for the victims and representing the victims. And that's a dimension of this, that the politics of it and the importance of our president, Donald Trump, and in getting to the root of an attempted assassination. We tend to sometimes overlook some of the people who are impacted by this, namely the one person who was killed and the wife and daughters he left behind. So I hope all your viewers take that time to continue to pray for them, because they deserve answers to that as well.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely do. And by the way, if you're in the chat and you want to chat about something, go ahead and we will bring you into the conversation. Be glad to do that. We can forget that Corey Comparatore or whatever, I forgot his name, but he died. He was killed. He was shot in the head protecting his family. So he actually died as a hero. But we forget that somebody lost their life on this. There's so many questions I have. I didn't want to prolong it any longer. But as you go through and think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute. Where was Corey at when he got shot? He wasn't directly behind Trump. He's off to the side in the bleachers. You have that piece of equipment that gets hit right in the hydraulic hose or whatever, and boom, it's spraying the water in a different direction than where Crooks is at when he's firing. So what's going on, And are these people such bad shots? I mean, even if you are a second shooter, you would think that all the shots would be coming right at Trump or right around Trump. All the people right behind him are the ones who should be dead. But it's just so many questions. Wow. Well, I want to get to you right now. Let's change gears here. So you have a lot of titles here. You're a mediator for Lake County Juvenile Court. You're a magistrate over the juvenile delinquency, traffic, and unruly cases. Assistant prosecutor for Ashtabula County. What else? You co-authored an amicus brief for the United States Supreme Court. You went to college in Marshall College of Law in Cleveland, and you live in Painesville. You have a wife and 3 kids.
Yes, I was actually one of Professor Plechnik's first students. When he first started teaching, I was a second-year law student and was in one of the first classes he taught.
Is that right? So I got to get you on here for a second. You take a bow for that. So you were one of his one of his professors.
It was my first year teaching at Cleveland State. I had taught at Georgetown University in the past, but it was my first semester at CSU. And Matt was an extraordinary student. I don't think I'm telling his colleagues anything they wouldn't already intuit from working with him. He's extraordinarily bright, and it's amazing to see him administer the law and justice at such a young age, including, by the way, serving on the Board of Trustees for Lakeland Community College. I'm proud to say that as commissioner, I voted to appoint him.
Excellent. Well, Matt, let's get into some of what you wanted to talk about tonight. And there were two different topics. One was the Ohio Constitution, and then there's also the fact that we're going to be celebrating our 250th birthday of America coming up, and you have a lot to do with that as well. So I guess we'll start with the Ohio Constitution, if you'd like. And what is it?
So I'd like to take a step back. I'm sure all of your viewers are familiar with the concept of federalism and what it means, but there's a subcomponent of that of judicial federalism. And we all know about the United States Constitution, and most of us, at least your viewers, know the Bill of Rights and what's in there. But we also have, each of the 50 states has a state constitution. And Ohio has a constitution that was, we're operating under one that was first ratified in 1851. There's an earlier one that we had replaced in 1802. But when the United States Constitution was first ratified, and when the Bill of Rights was first ratified, that Bill of Rights was meant to protect citizens against the federal government. The citizens at the time understood that the states would protect its citizens through their own state constitutions. And a lot of the judicial activism that we see at the national level, part of it can be attributed to a lack of enforcement of our own state constitutions. So when we're talking about enforcing certain national rights, we can overlook the rights that we have protected in our own state constitution. And so that's part of the something that I've been doing a lot of research on. I've just finished drafting a law review article that I hope to have published on it.
Let me ask a quick question here. We have the Ohio Constitution, we have the U.S. Constitution. So the U.S. Constitution would take precedence over the Ohio Constitution, right? Is there ever a time when it doesn't, or is it just always?
It always does, but remember that the U.S. Constitution also has, in regards to the federal government, it's a government of limited powers. And then in that Bill of Rights, there's that 9th and 10th Amendment that reserve powers to the people and to the states respectively. And so there are some things that we can have the state be the primary agent of certain actions. We talk about things like education, for example, that the only power that the federal government has over education is in regards to the money that the federal government gives to the states. And so there's a lot above and beyond that, where if you're filing a federal claim on something, you might not be able to get too far. That you might have a federal judge that say you only get this, and you're asking for something else. That something else you may be able to get under the state constitution. Actually the chief judge for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Jeffrey Sutton, has wrote about this. He's talked about it as being in a basketball game and getting 2 free throws. That the national constitution, a national constitutional claim is 1 free throw, and we have a lot of litigants out there who file claims just under the federal constitution, and they're giving up that second free throw.
So. Here's maybe we can go ask you a couple questions on this too, because we're trying to do, Brian is trying to get together and change the Ohio Constitution when it comes to property taxes. And we know that in the last few years, there's been a lot of changes to the Ohio Constitution. So how does that, if you do change the Ohio Constitution, how does that affect all the other laws that were in effect with the Ohio Constitution prior to that,
It's something that is an active conversation in Ohio right now. I'm sure a lot of your viewers are thinking about the recent constitutional changes in regards to abortion and women's reproductive rights. That was something that we have a whole bunch of laws and regulations on the books that were passed regarding abortion, that then a lot of that was put into place under the framework of Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, 2 United States Supreme Court cases that dealt with abortion. And then that was actually the case that I had an amicus brief as an attorney for Lawyers for Life. I wrote an amicus brief in the Dobbs decision, which then overturned Roe versus Wade. But the response in Ohio was to pass a constitutional amendment that purportedly protects women's reproductive rights. And there are a lot of people who argue it goes beyond what was legal under the Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey framework. And so that's something that's being litigated right now, is what's the effect of those laws that were put on the books before those amendments. We've got some judges out of Hamilton County who say none of them are good anymore. We've talked about preliminary injunctions on the national stage. We've got a couple judges in Columbus and Cincinnati who think they can institute statewide injunctions in this state. And that's one of the ones that so this is something that it's really important that people have an understanding of what the Ohio Constitution provides. Again, you think of our Bill of Rights, and there are 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights that we think of as being our rights giving. Ohio's Constitution has Article 1. We start our Constitution outlining all of our rights, and there are 22 sections rather than 10, and a lot of those sections give multiple rights per section.
So you wanted to focus on Article...
question,
one second. You wanted to focus on Article 1, Section 16. Is that correct? What is that?
And the reason for that is just this past term, the Ohio State Supreme Court decided a case called State Ex Rel. Cincinnati Enquirer versus Bloom. And that was a case that dealt with this provision of the Constitution because it says all courts shall be open. And the Cincinnati Enquirer was trying to get courts records in a juvenile case, a case in which after the case had been prosecuted, the juvenile had passed away, and they were trying to get into the records of that case. It was a manslaughter-based case, so they were trying to figure out what actually happened in this shooting incident. And in that case, it had been automatically sealed, and the state had basically said that our open courts provision means the same thing as what the United States Supreme Courts talk about court access under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. They had done that just honestly, in my opinion, because they were lazy. It's much easier for a judge, instead of making up their own test on a constitutional issue, or to go back and actually do the research to do some originalism and see what the founders and the citizens of the state, when this constitutional provision first came into effect, what they understood it to mean. It's much easier to go to the big guys in the United States Supreme Court, try and find something that's analogous there. And the Supreme Court has a line of cases about accessing court records under the First Amendment. And they said, we're just going to apply that test, even though our Constitution has a directly applicable provision about the courts. And it says all courts shall be open. And now that we have a panel of state Supreme Court judges or justices who are all influenced by originalism to one degree or another, they were willing to take a second look at this and basically say that, it was wrong for them as justices who had sworn an oath not just to the United States Constitution, but to the Ohio Constitution, to basically subordinate the Ohio Constitution to whatever the United States Supreme Court says that the U.S. Constitution means. And they actually conducted an original analysis of Article 1, Section 16. And so the research that I've done is because there's more to that provision than just saying all courts shall be open. There's a right to remedy provision. There's a due course of law subcomponent of that. And there's also a provision regarding justice being neither delayed nor denied. So it's almost like a speedy trial provision, and also a fair process provision.
Okay, hang on a second. Brian's got a question. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Hello, Matt. Would you agree that the Ohio Constitution has been changed 177 times, if I remember that number correctly? Is that correct?
I think you've got the number right. It's 176, 177. It's somewhere around there. And this was part of our statewide discussion a couple of years ago. Should we make it harder to change the Ohio Constitution? And unfortunately, a lot of that conversation got wrapped up in the conversation regarding abortion, and that amendment to the Constitution to make it harder to amend got shut down nearly at the same rate as the abortion amendment was passed. And so I think we did ourselves a disservice in terms of actually having a conversation as citizens of this state on what the Constitution means and why has it been amended so often, and what are there other ways we can address our Constitution without necessarily amending it so many times?
Well, it just seems to me that the legislators are just not doing their job. If they, why don't they do it through the Ohio Revised Code as opposed to the Constitution? Because changing it that many times, you wonder, does the Constitution today, it does not bear any resemblance to what the original Constitution was all about. So what is what's the foundation? Of our state, and what do we really believe? But I think the legislators probably like going through the route of changing the Constitution, because then they don't have to be held to account for any votes.
Yeah. Well, let's hang on one second. Let's pull up the chat. Let's ask the chat. Maybe you can answer this, Matt, and you can answer Brian's question. But it says. It's from Angela Jill Marlowe. Then you have local ordinances and resolutions in these local nonpartisan political subdivisions like villages and townships under home rule, a third layer. And what do we have here? We have amended our Ohio Constitution over 200 times. It has become more of a suggestion. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, she may be right in the number of attempts to change the Constitution. I think Brian had the actual number of times it was successfully amended, but there have been many more than 200 attempts to amend the state Constitution. And one of the most famous changes to our Constitution was the implementation of home rule. And many of your audience members, as conservatives, may believe that the government that governs locally governs best, and that was one of the reasons why in that era you had kind of a cross-partisan support of that home rule amendment, that more power locally is something that's good. But there's also a lot of scholarship up there that I haven't gotten into myself, but may be interested to your viewers, in terms of an original understanding of home rule, that it didn't really completely supplant the power of the state legislature to govern on certain issues, and that what it basically allowed cities and villages and even counties with home rule authority to do is basically create for themselves how they wanted the actual organ of government to operate. Something like, do you want an elected city mayor? Do you want a city council, city manager type of government? Do you want multiple elected executives or a single executive? Those were all things that each municipality could determine on its own. But it didn't necessarily mean that every village and every city and every county could just make up whatever law it wanted. That basically the state legislature has the ultimate authority on passing laws that affect our entire state.
So I want to follow off. The magistrate's point, the trustee's point. It is true that cities and villages have home rule under the Ohio Constitution, and townships can actually adopt limited home rule, but counties cannot. Counties are simply creatures of the state and do not have the means or the authority to make law. That's why counties govern by resolution, whereas you'll see cities and villages adopt ordinances and resolutions. Ordinances actually are the law. Resolutions are merely an official action by the body. And so county commissioners only operate under the Ohio Revised Code by resolution, whereas cities and villages have the privilege of passing ordinances and making local laws. And I know this as a former councilman on the one hand and a county commissioner today on the other. But the point is certainly well taken that the real test for home rule, so even if you are a city or a village that can potentially trump state law, that only applies for quote-unquote local issues. For matters of statewide concern, the state still has the power to preempt local legislation, and that's really where the rubber hits the road. The state always argues that everything impacts the whole state. The city says, nope, it's just local, and I can tell you that the trend in the courts lately has been to side with the state. And so you see a real encroachment in the last 10, 20 years of the state legislature on home rule, and your mayors, your managers, your city council people, they're none too happy about it.
You're right on that. So if there was something, if you want to comment on that, go ahead, Matt. Just also wondering if there was something, is the Ohio Constitution really fulfilling what it was created to do? I mean, if we're changing it 200 times, it's kind of like, what does it become? And what should it be? Because it's not the Ohio Revised Code. It is our Constitution. What should be in there then?
Yeah, and I think that's where it goes back to, what did the people who first created the Ohio Constitution, what did they have an understanding of what it means? What did it mean to them? Because we inherited that from them, right? And their understanding of a constitution was, one, it kind of defined what the government was. What made up the government? Is it a legislature with one house, with two houses? Is it an executive with a single executive, a unitary executive, multiple executive individuals or bodies? Is it a judicial system with one court, with multiple courts? That's kind of the nuts and bolts of government piece of it. But the other point of a constitution is that it also constrains the government. It tells the government, because unlike the national government, which we have a constitution that has limited enumerated powers to the federal government, the state constitutions have plenary power. And so our forebears had an understanding that wasn't correct, that they shouldn't have all power, and that the power that the states have a right to exercise need to be limited in terms of certain rights that individuals have, and those need to be spelled out. Because we saw that was, and this is a way to segue into America 250, that the British Parliament was not honoring the rights that the American colonists had, the rights that they just believed that were understood on both sides of the Atlantic and were being consistently violated.
Hey, Matt,
so there's this understanding that we need to write this down, and we need to make it enforceable. So that's what I see as our state constitution being. And that's why I believe it's important for people to have an understanding of what are those rights in that Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution, and what does Section 16 mean when it says all courts shall be open and to all individuals have a right to remedy to any injury done in their person, their goods, their property, their reputation in the due course of law, and that justice shall be administered without delay or denial. What does that mean for people? How often are people not getting they're in court and they're waiting years for their case to be decided? Is that delay under Section 16 of Article 1 of our state constitution? Are we constitutionally administering our court system right now? Are there certain injuries to people's property, to their person, or even to their reputation that the state legislature is violating by limiting the remedies that people can seek under our Ohio Revised Code? Are there aspects of our state law that are unconstitutional because they don't allow people a real and adequate remedy? And those are the things that people need to have an understanding of, so that when they have an injury and they want to a redress, instead of going to the federal courts and saying this is unconstitutional under the national constitution, they may actually have more rights under the state constitution.
Gotcha. I'm going to throw John back on here, John. So you taught him well, by the way.
Very proud of Matt.
Very proud. Yes, you should be. Is there anything, because we're going to go on, I want to get on to the America 250 here, but was there anything you wanted to add to what Matt just said? Or
I would just say to your original question, when would the state constitution come into play when the federal constitution does not? In many cases, the federal constitution sets the bare minimum standard that the state cannot go below, but there's nothing preventing a state constitution from giving more rights. And that's why Matt says you might actually have more rights to vindicate under state law than federal law, and education is the perfect example. My first published article, Equal Access to Public Education, makes just that point, that there is no fundamental right to education at the national level, but many states, including North Carolina, which I focused on in that piece, do have rights in the state constitution to education. And that's just one of myriad examples where you might have more robust rights, protections under the state constitution than the federal. So it's not that they conflict, it's that the federal constitution often sets the baseline and states may choose to afford even more protection. But at the end of the day, remember, our founders gave us a very pithy document. The Ohio Constitution is a book by comparison, and so I think that Matt is advising you well that you should seriously look to what your rights are under state law, because in many cases you're going to see a far more specific provision in the Ohio Constitution than in the U.S.
Yeah, very good. And if you guys don't mind, Matt, if you don't mind.
Joe, can I ask one question of our two lawyers here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you define what is really the role of government?
So,
Could
Brian,
government be involved in public
John
education?
Adams, he would.
Well, go ahead, Matt. We'll give you the shot there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to quote John Adams. I believe he's the one who said that the purpose of government is to help ensure the greatest happiness for the greatest number. And what that essentially is talking about is creating, an atmosphere in a way for people to flourish, because we can't do all things for all people as a government. That's not the proper role of government. But if you provide a justice system, if you give people the sense of security through adequate, police and other public security measures, and provide a way for people to educate themselves, if not by the state, that people can flourish. And that's what I see as the role of government.
I think, like most conservatives, I take a minimalist role in what government should do. I'm reminiscing on John Stuart Mill's harm principle, that you should only intervene and limit someone's free will if and to the extent they're harming others. You should only intervene to prevent harm. So if I'm off on my own, doing my own thing, government should not be involved in my choices. But when my choices have negative externalities, I'm dumping garbage on my neighbor's lawn, I'm shooting people, I'm dangerous to others, that's where government should intervene. Because the alternative is the Wild West, where everyone intervenes on their own behalf. So I think the harm principle is a pretty good articulation of the role of government, that government should leave you alone unless you're hurting others. And that brings you to the broader role of government, that we need to have police, we need to have military, we need to have strong borders, because all those relate to preventing harm. Unfortunately, we've seen mission creep in government, where it's become everything from our overlord to our nanny. Unfortunately, the big brother state isn't even scary anymore. It's basically just describing an airport. We've gone well beyond that. Anything you could have imagined in 1984, we have gone well beyond. And many people think that is the role of government, because that's what government is doing. But that's precisely why we're seeing society so fragile at this point. when someone else is responsible for and does everything for you, you start to lose your own capacity to do it for yourself. And I think that's why we're seeing such difficulty in America today, because the government's been doing so much for so many, they're incapable of doing for themselves. And when the government is incapable of intervening, it leaves a lot of people helpless.
Yeah, Commissioner and Matt, would you agree with my statement that what I have seen in my observations of in Lake County and in state government, that the public sector has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for all of these services that they're providing?
I don't disagree, Brian, but I think your critique becomes all the more scathing when you realize that Lake County is probably in the umpteenth top percentile of conservative-run governments, whether you're looking at city, village, township government, libraries, the county as a whole. You see principally conservative Republicans in those roles, and I would say they're doing better on average than their colleagues in other counties in Ohio and in most other states, which is not a defense and not to say that you're wrong. Quite the contrary, I think the government is too big in Lake County and in Willoughby Hills. But at the same time, I believe we're doing better than most of our competitors on that margin, which tells you that the wider world is out of control.
Yeah, government has definitely got out of control. No question about it. I'm going to switch gears here tonight, and we're going to talk about America is celebrating its 250th birthday coming up here. And but before I do that, I've got some breaking news, and I got to get this out over. This is hot off the press, okay, right off the cell phone here. Has nothing to do with the Ohio Constitution, but I thought it was important. Brian, you might find this important as well. The Steve Miller Band is canceling their entire 2025 tour due to climate change. Did you guys hear about that? Their entire 2025 tour is being canceled.
Well, we're going to miss
Steve Miller. Steve, you guys don't even know who Steve Miller is. He's so old.
Joe, I think he just found out that winter is one of the 4 seasons and it's too cold for him.
It could be. Now, somebody claims there is this rumor out there that they've had declining ticket sales, but that ain't really the truth. The truth is climate change. They don't want to do any more climate. It's so crazy. Everything is beyond crazy. All right, Matthew.
I have to tell you, Joe, when Mayor Bibb and NOACA tried to pass a climate change resolution a few years ago, I remember saying, this is a ridiculous derailing of our efforts to actually work on roads and bridges and fairly allocate that money to communities. I said, I believe in God, not Captain Planet. And I remember everyone went spastic, in particular the mayor of Cleveland Heights, who's actually being recalled right now.
Right.
They're like, you're saying I believe in a fictional blue man who flies around. How dare you? I said, well, you're taking all of this on faith. You're not willing to have a discussion. You're not willing to consider evidence. That's not the scientific method. That's religion, and that's fine. You can believe in Captain Planet if you want to, but I believe in God, not Captain Planet. And the Plain Dealer ran not 1, not 2, but 3 front-page stories on it because they were so furious, and they were trying to punish me. And it's like, no, you don't understand. I want you to run a story every day on the front page saying that I don't believe in climate change. Please.
Well,
and here's my way of being able to segue this conversation back to America 250, because 250 years ago, at about this time, the Continental Congress was adopting a whole bunch of different resolutions that were directed towards the American people, resolutions directed towards King George and his parliament, resolutions directed towards the British people. And one of the things that they claimed in nearly all of those documents, one of the things they were so proud of, was our natural resources here in this country. That at this time, when they still wanted to maintain reconciliation with Great Britain, stay part of that British Empire, one of the kind of threats that they used was, if you push us too far, beware, because we have the capability of being independent. Look at our natural resources. And that's something that those founders didn't intend just for them at that time. They intended for us to enjoy in perpetuity. So as inheritors of not just the independence that those founders gave to us 250 years ago, we also need to be grateful for all the resources that they knew that this country had, and use it for our continued American independence.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute, Matt, because if we go back to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, there were 56 signers, and I was reading where a lot of them were killed, tortured, families were destroyed. It's incredible how many of them had misfortune, and this is after we actually won. I mean, we won the war, but they were still victims because the British went after them. It's amazing, and most of them were very wealthy, and they died in poverty. We don't know the names of most of these men, these 56 signers. We know a few, like Ben Franklin and that, but John Hancock, but we don't know the vast majority of them. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I can address it briefly. You mentioned Benjamin Franklin, and Benjamin Franklin is the one who famously said around the time that the Declaration was being signed that surely if we don't hang together, we shall all hang separately. These were men who understood that what they were doing was treacherous. It was at that time period, people still had a kind of personal understanding of government relations, that they had an understanding that they were subjects to the king in Britain. And even though Parliament had most of the political authority at that time, there was still a personal bond between citizens and subject, between the colonists and the king. And so betraying that by declaring independence, they were not only severing the political bonds, but that bond between all of them and the king, which under the law was a betrayal that would leave them, would necessitate their being hanged, necessitate all of their forfeiting all of their property. When they have that line in the Declaration about dedicating their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, that was serious. That wasn't just rhetoric. All of them, the British could just come in and take their property, and they did. There's almost an understanding, because we won and because of the superpower that America is now, it almost is taken for granted the risks that the founders were taking. And people forget that Britain had such a tight control throughout the 7 years of that conflict, that Great Britain ended up controlling all of our ports, controlled, New York City, had taken over Philadelphia. The Continental Congress had to change its meeting location 3 or 4 times to keep getting away from where the British were controlling the territory. People have a vague idea of Valley Forge, but it's really hard unless you've actually served in the military or maybe done some extreme camping to really know the hardships that the Continental Army faced during that winter. And that is something that I think we, as a country, we need to talk about, because we can have a sense of gratitude then for what those men did and what they stood up for. And I'm hoping that as part of our national celebration, those other names, the names that are forgotten, the names of the founders who were killed, the names of the founders who lost everything, all of their land, all of their property, who had family members die, who lost their sons who were, or brothers who were fighting in the Continental Army, that by having an understanding of all the hardships that they bore, we can be more grateful for the land of prosperity that we live in today.
What are you doing with the America 250 now, specifically?
Yeah, so Commissioner Plechnik is actually the chair of the local county committee here in Lake County. I'm also working with Lakeland to make sure that Lakeland Community College has some events to participate over the course of next year. And on a personal basis, I've started a little YouTube page to go through events as they come down the pike, commemorating things from 250 years ago. That YouTube page is Remembering America 250. So if you search YouTube, you should be able to find it there. And just trying to get the word out. One of the things that I know Commissioner Plechnik is focused on with our local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution is going through and identifying, well, we already have them all identified, all of the men who served in the Continental Army, who then after the war came here and settled in Lake County and were buried here. And we're trying to start an effort. The Men of Honor Club locally is also involved in this, of trying to refurbish some of those grave sites and grave markers, so that people can actually come and honor the men who actually fought for our independence and then started us off here in Lake County. These are guys who not only risked their lives 250 years ago, but then risked it all again by traveling out. Most of these men came from New England, because this was all part of the Western Reserve of Connecticut. They came here and they risked it all to start our community here.
Very good.
To start our state.
Now you're the chairman, huh? You're going to be chairman of Lake County as well, as what Matt was just saying. So what do you got up your sleeve with this?
So for starters, who knows the official term for America's 250th birthday? We had the centennial, we had the bicentennial. What do we call the 250th?
Well, it wouldn't be the tricentennial. That'd be 300, right?
Try and say it without twisting your
forward. I'm looking forward to that one, Joe. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to that.
So would we just say the tricentennial minus 50? Is that what we would call it?
Not quite. The semi-quincentennial. Semi-quincentennial.
Semi-quincentennial, yeah.
So we need to remember that as we celebrate the
John.
250th. It'll be the semi-quincentennial next year. It is going to be the most amazing celebration of patriotism in the last 50 to 100 years. And to Matt's point, we really need to consider the heroes who are buried here, who lived here in Lake County, Ohio, perhaps the most famous of which was General Payne, the man who founded the Paynesville Township, the city of Paynesville, and who has his name permanently memorialized by our seat for the county. So not quite as famous as Major Payne, I know, but General Payne is buried right here in Lake County, and the city of Paynesville is his namesake. And to celebrate that, a little less than a week from now, this coming Saturday at the Lake County Fair, the America 250 Committee is going to be sharing a limited edition General Payne bobblehead to the first almost 1,000 people to come through. So if you're a history buff, if you're from Paynesville, if you love learning about the Revolutionary War, this is a really special souvenir to have for the 250th. I recommend you get in line early. They're going to start distributing the General Payne bobblehead at noon in the History Building on the fairgrounds, and I don't think it's going to last long. I'm going to be lining up early to get mine.
So that's on July 4th of next year?
No, this year. This Saturday. So the semi-quincentennial, yes, that is the day next year. But the General Payne bobblehead is this coming Saturday at the Lake County Fair.
Oh, wow. Wow, didn't know that. You guys are celebrating early. Any last thoughts, Brian, on anything?
Yeah, this sounds very interesting. We'll stay on top of it. And Lake County Fairgrounds, we may think about getting our petition signed. There's going to be a lot of patriots there, and they'd be interested in abolishing property taxes, I'm sure.
Excellent. Well, I'll give you the last word tonight, Matt. You're a wealth of information. Really appreciate you coming on, and good luck with everything. What is your next goal, or are you happy where you're at with the magistrate, or I know you got a lot of talent there, so I was just curious if. You're not looking to run for politics, are you? Are you looking to run for politics? Yeah.
At this point, I'm looking to help our families and children here in Lake County through the Lake County Juvenile Court, and I want to get the word out about the story of Ohio and the story of America, and that's why I'm focusing on this legal research on the Ohio Constitution. Hope to share with your viewers that one of our law reviews throughout the state of Ohio here picks up the article that I currently have drafted. And why I'm getting out the story of America and America 250. So again, as I said before, I think once people see what we have, that it's part of a story, both at the state level and the national level, that we have people who for 250 years in America have brought us to where we are today. And in the state of Ohio, since roughly that same time, even though Ohio didn't become a state until 1802. One of the reasons we fought the Revolution was because in the French and Indian War, we had a lot of people, including George Washington himself, who had land title in along the Ohio River. They fought so that they could come here and settle in Ohio, and the British Parliament and King George prohibited that. So they were fighting for the right to settle here. And that this is something that once people see it as a story, understand the people, the human beings, the real life people who fought for this, who shared their ideas about this, once they associate themselves with that story, I think they'll have a sense of gratitude for being both Americans and Ohioans, and we can really see our country and our state move forward with that sense of gratitude.
Oh, awesome. Hey, you're doing a fantastic job. Fantastic job.
Can I mention one other thing, Joe? I forgot to mention I will be speaking along with Leonard and perhaps John Morrow tomorrow night with the Harbor Group in Eastlake. And the following week, we have speaking engagements down in Xenia and also in Marietta, Monday and Tuesday of the following week. So we're looking forward to talking to the patriots down there in the southern part of the state and educating them about property taxes and how they are the foundation of freedom and liberty. This is more than just property taxes. This is a freedom and liberty issue that we are addressing.
You got it. Well, Matt, thanks again. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have to have you on again. Keep giving us updates on all that America 250 and everything, and whatever else is happening with the Ohio Constitution. A wealth of information. Thank you very much. Thank
you so much for having me.
Get you the confetti. John, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
John.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Guys, take care. See
all
you
right,
around.
Joe. Thank you very much.
The games are done.